realized that my overall philosophy is I just want to create lazy surfers. Let me explain what I mean by that. But it's basically, I want them to be able to catch the most waves with the least amount of effort. And what I found is that there's an extraordinary amount of energy waste that's happening in the ocean with surfers. If you look at it, there's three main areas where surfers waste the most energy. And it's one is...
Welcome back, or welcome to the Surf Mastery Podcast, the podcast that helps surfers to catch more waves and surf with more speed, style, and grace. Today we have a return guest, is Rob Case. He first appeared back in episode 12 and then again in episode 91. And Rob specializes in surfing, paddling, or paddling for surfing. Now, I have just released a course which is all about what you do, or improving what you do between when the surfboard is under your arm and when the surfboard is under your feet, because every other surfing course is all about what do you do when you're standing up. However, 99% of what we do when we are surfing is not actually surfing. It is sitting there looking at the ocean, trying to predict where waves are coming, or paddling around trying to catch them, which is a lot of that time is spent paddling. That is Rob's speciality. And ideally, you can get in front of Rob and do a one-on-one in Northern California, or get to one of his courses and get some hands-on experience. If you can't do that, he's got an awesome YouTube channel and his own podcast, and he's just released a book.
Yeah.
So you can get into the details of it. Rob, welcome back to the show. Why the book?
That's a good question. It's a good sleeping aid. Have you tried that yet?
I listen to my own podcast to get to sleep.
No, the book was, I wanted it as another avenue for surfers to get the information. But what I realized as I was writing it, and it took several years to finally get it completed, but as I'm kind of going through it and putting it together, I'm realizing that I can put a lot more detail, as you said, into the book than I can into the online course on the videos. So a lot of the things that I was saying to clients when we were working one-on-one and in person or in the small groups, I didn't have in the online course, those little nuances of clarification. And the book allowed me to have all this time and space to kind of put all that in for those that really wanted that. So that was kind of the main purpose for the book, was just another avenue, but also to allow people that want those nuances that actually learn better by text to get that kind of avenue. And then also, to allow people that can't afford my in-person stuff to get the information anyway. So now nobody really has an excuse not to work on paddling technique, right? Or to learn about it, right? Before it was, I can't afford your in-person, which I totally understand. And so I did the online course, and okay, that's too expensive. Okay, now you get the book. There's really nothing. And then I even have free resources like the YouTube and my blog and the podcast. So no excuse if you really want to improve your paddling technique. And I'll clarify that I work on paddling technique, not so much fitness. I do have fitness, but fitness is more other people's realms. I'm really focused on the movement and driving that neural pathway in your brain so that you're doing it over and over again without having to think about it, as you've witnessed and been a part of.
Oh yeah, witnessed and been a part of it in many levels. When a 12-year-old kid on a shortboard paddles past you and you think that you're a good paddler and you're like, what is he doing? And it wasn't. Yeah. I always thought, before I came across your work, I always thought I was just stronger somehow. He surfs more than me, but no, it's all about efficiency and technique. And interestingly, it's something not a lot of surfers really think about. They have the same attitude I used to have before discovering your work. They sort of just dismiss it as, it's something that experienced surfers do or gifted athletes sort of naturally have. But no, you can definitely learn it. And I like the fact that there is a book, because some people learn by reading a book, and the book gives you so much room to add more details. That's how we've learnt throughout history. A lot of the time is books. Videos and stuff are quite new. And you think of any other individual sport like tennis or golf, there's go on Amazon, there's books galore. And
Yeah.
it's kind of strange that there's not that many books on surfing. I don't know why. I guess 'cause surfing's such a new thing, and certainly, accepting that you are a surf nerd and you want to really learn, that's even newer than surfing itself. Even 10 years ago, it certainly wasn't cool to have a surf coach or to analyze your paddling technique. I think now it's becoming a lot more accepted. There still is a little bit of that there, but I mean, I remember watching. I think Italo, when Italo first surfed the box, and he openly admitted that he'd been up since 4 a.m. practicing his pop-ups on his bed. So,
Really?
yeah. So
Huh.
even the best in the world, they actually, behind the scenes, you'd be surprised how much work they're putting in and how much geeking out they're doing in order just to get that much better than their competitors. And, there's no reason why we as surfers, just, as recreational surfers, I remember going through a phase where I kind of thought surfing was this selfish pursuit, and you know, why would I, why would I bother putting all that time and effort into it? And then I realized, who cares? Surfing's my thing. I'm going to give it everything I got. And that stage of my life where I really obsessed about surfing and was, reading books on how to read water and taking fitness courses and spending time coming to see you and watching your content. That period of time where I obsessed over everything surfing, I never regret that, and it's amazing how much better you can become.
Yeah, absolutely. It's funny, you kind of stirred something in my brain why surfing is so late to the game for getting information, for having books, for having coaches. And, like every other sport, like you said, has these things. So is it because we just have never really viewed it as a sport, or have we never viewed it as a serious sport, or is it not a sport? Those are the debatable questions. I think the Olympics really helped quite a bit because leading up to the acceptance in the Olympics, and even before that, McFanning kind of started it all well before that. But the Olympics, I think, really rocketed coaching to a huge degree. And I get really serious surfers come to me now, and they're very open minded, and I'm always I'm always kind of like, okay, well, how skeptical is this person? That's always, kind of these old school minded surfers that don't really think that technique is going to change anything, and they're becoming much more open minded as they walk in the door, as opposed to 10 years ago when I started the in-person stuff. So really interesting that you brought that up. um, yeah, I don't know. What do you think? Do you think it's because of the Olympics? Do you think it's just the evolution of the demographic of surfers? So there's a lot new surfers that are older now, and they're
Hmm.
thinkers, as opposed to when we started, it was like, oh, we're just kids, and the kids really held up the industry. But now, not so much.
I think it's more psychological than anything, and it can often start with how you define surfing. Like you mentioned, what is it, a sport? I like to define surfing as an art more than anything else. And you might think, oh, that takes away from training as a sport. Well, actually, no, it doesn't, because you think of music, and if you're into music, then you learn music theory and you practice. You
Yeah,
learn, if you're playing guitar, you learn your scales and your chord shapes, and you practice your timing with a metronome, and so that you can play,
yeah.
right?
You
So
practice your fundamentals, right? Yeah,
exactly. Or if you're an artist, you might spend a week doing dotalism, learning a different style or using a different type of paint or a different type of brush. You're not actually creating art per se. You're just learning to use a new technique or a new piece of equipment, or even a new form of art. A
yeah,
painter might try sculpture for a while and come back to painting. So I think if we have that attitude as a surfer, where it's an art, and it gives it a bit more depth, first of all, than it just being a sport or a recreational activity. I think that helps us to be a bit more fascinated and obsessed and immersed in surfing, and it almost gives yourself permission to dive in deeper and think. Because I mean, logically, think about it. Most of the time, I don't stand up on my board. why am I watching all these bottom turn and top turn techniques when I actually just really want to catch more waves, really,
Yeah.
because that's what it's about. So I should probably be better at paddling and better at reading the ocean and better at choosing breaks that aren't as crowded and better at choosing the right surfboard for the conditions. This, like being a better surfer is, I think the technique of your bottom turn, etc., is such a small part of it. And I think it's, first of all, it's great that a lot of people are diving into that,
Hmm.
um, and getting better at that stuff. But I think it's often misguided because it's so hard to be focused in the moment to change the way you bottom turn.
Yeah,
You've got to get everything else right first.
yeah.
You've got to be
I,
a
I'm I
confident waterman.
I tell you guys all the time, like I have the easy job. I can make somebody take thousands of strokes and I can correct them, within the first five. Whereas a surf coach, you need a designated part on the wave. The wave needs to be shaped a certain way. They need to be balanced. They need to be of sound consciousness to do something that you've told them to do. There's, like you said, there's all these nuances just to that one thing, and everything happens so quickly. How is a surf coach ever able to really get that repetitive motor learning? It's really difficult. It's really, really difficult. So I have the easy job, and I stop when people stand up, and then I'm like, I hand it off. I'm
Yeah.
like, go work with a great surf coach. But yeah, it is a difficult job.
Mm.
Um, but
Yeah.
I think on an extension to that is surfers that are listening to this, the surfers that come to me are growth minded. It's like you said, it's like a mindset. You were looking at art versus sport, but I think it's more just almost like a learning mindset. Are you open minded? Are you a growth kind of mindset? In which case, yeah, you're going to get better at really anything you do. You're going to try to find resources to get better at those things. Whereas a fixed mindset, they're kind of just happy where they're at. They don't really want change until uh, something devastating possibly happens. Like they get an injury,
Yeah.
or they're not able to get up to the feet anymore, or they're not able to catch waves anymore. Or, something stirs that there's an event that happens that then stirs them to become more growth minded. And I find that it's funny when I do little trips with clients, and they're like, "Oh man, everybody's so cool on this trip. Like, where do you find all these people?" I'm like, I don't. They come to me. But I think there's a way in which I share my information that kind of weeds out the fixed-minded folks from the growth-minded folks, and I think that's one thing. And I'm very happy that I feel like I've designed that, and I get the best clients out of it, which is, and they're not just great to work with. They're just good people. They're always wanting to learn, and they're challenging me all the time, which is fantastic too. So, yeah, it's been a fun ride. I think you said earlier, you're like, wow, I think our first conversation in 2016. I started the in-person in 2015. I started the online and virtual coaching in 2011. So it's been a long time, and there's been a bit of evolution. And back then, it was really just about helping surfers catch more waves with less effort. That was always the tagline. And then it evolved into kind of helping them catch waves at that point. Because as we've discussed, 90% of the paddling we do is just paddling around, right? And I think within the last 2 years or so, I've realized that my overall philosophy is I just want to create lazy surfers. And let me explain what I mean by that. But it's basically, I want them to be able to catch the most waves with the least amount of effort. And what I found is that there's an extraordinary amount of energy waste that's happening in the ocean with surfers. And they're really, if you look at it, there's three main areas where surfers waste the most energy. And it's one is paddling, and a lot of that can be cleaned up through technique first. And then there's also fitness on top of that can help. So that's the number one thing. That's level one, right? That's my level one. But then level two goes into the other two areas. And another area where surfers burn a lot of energy, and they don't really have to. They're just inefficient with their energy, is wave catching. So you can work really, really hard and not catch the wave. That's the ultimate waste. You can work really, really hard and then go over the falls. That's it's wave catching and kind of popping up. Both of those
Mm.
are together, standing up. If they're not fluid with that, if they don't have control of their board, then they're going to burn energy because they're going to end up in the impact zone. You could even see advanced surfers that do catch waves, but they're taking 10, 11, 12 strokes to get it. That's inefficient. So something in that process can be improved. So that's the second area where I see just tons of surfers burning a lot of energy. And then the last area that I realized just in the last couple of years when I've kind of refined level two is getting out strategy and technique. And it's some of that's paddling, yes, but the strategy of getting out. I can't tell you how many times I've seen this. Surfer catches first, second wave of the set, gets to the inside, turns around, immediately starts paddling back out. There's still a set coming in, still waves coming in, and they're going towards the impact zone, thinking in their mind that they're going to make it to the last wave and get the last wave of the set. Now you're laughing because you know what in reality, 99% of the time they do make it out, and then the ocean goes flat, right? And they're like, oh, thank goodness I made it out. But what an extraordinary amount of wasted energy. After your wave, just kind of hang out, wait. You can duck dive, you can turtle roll, you can sea anchor all these waves with less energy, and then wait for the set to pass and then go out, right?
Yeah.
And that's just one example of just getting out strategy and technique that there's an extraordinary amount of waste that's happening. And so level one is all about that first one, technique. And then level two now, really the main focus, the main goal is saving energy in those other two areas. It's wave catching, it's popping up, and it's getting out. And it's been really fun to kind of go down that route with surfers because I start to introduce them in level one, and then by the time we get to level two, they're piecing it all together, and now they're like, a lot of them are kind of angry. They're like, oh, man, I used to use surfing as like an exercise. Now I am the ultimate lazy surfer and not spending a lot of time, a lot of energy surfing, which is really fun. So for me, kind of the end of my journey is once I finish the level two online class. That's kind of my next big project. The book was a huge project for me. And then once the online level two is done, then I won't stop. There's no more growing for me in that respect. And then I'll just kind of figure out at that point what's the next kind of coaching growth for me. But that's my overall goal, which really just came to me in the process of writing this book and in conducting a lot of level twos lately.
Oh, cool. Yeah, that's a great tip. Yeah. Yeah, didn't even articulate, but I realize I do that. If I catch the first wave of a set and I want to paddle back out, I don't, I just stay because the wave breaks and it dissipates. You can just kind of stay on the inside and glide over or gently duck dive the white water, and all that water's coming in. It's got to go back out. So the last wave of the set, once I've duck dived that's when I put in the paddling effort, and
Yeah.
you're going with the water drawing back out, and you probably only have to duck dive the secondary waves that are in between the main swell sets. Exactly.
Yeah. And it's crazy. And it goes back to what you're talking about is being obsessed with learning about the ocean. If you don't know what's in the water that day, what types of swells, what periods, what direction, you're already at a disadvantage because if someone listens to this right now and they're like, okay, every time I catch a wave, I'm going to wait on the inside, but they don't realize it's a short period swell and there's no real break, then what's the strategy?
Exactly.
Like if they're not aware of where the currents are flowing, what's their strategy? Like they're just going to burn energy. And that I like you, I just nerd out on the oceanography side of it and learning more about the ocean. And as experienced surfers, I think you were the one that said it when you took level two with me in the very early days. You were like, yeah, this is great information. It was something that I kind of already knew as an experienced surfer. And you were like, I think a lot of experienced surfers know this stuff, but we couldn't connect the why.
Mm,
Right? Now we can connect their why. Like, okay, now I get it, why we would do this. But you ultimately learned it through all the years of learning about the ocean and learning about waves and learning and just getting out there and trial and error, which was really, I remember that you telling me that, and I was like, oh, that's a really, really good point.
Mm. Well, it goes back to what we started the conversation with is if you grew up on the east coast of Australia and your dad and your uncle surfed and you've had a surfboard since you were 4 years old, by the time you're 17, you've got so much experience. You've picked up so much from your elders that you don't even realize, and you don't even know what you. So of course you can go to Bali and just get on the bintangs and go out and get barreled at double overhead waves. Of course, without even thinking, you don't have to nerd out about any of this stuff. But the listeners of this show are most likely didn't surf that much when they were younger, or probably more likely started as adults. So you've got like 12, 15 years worth of information to try and pack in as an adult with a non-rubbery body. Yeah, you have to, if you truly really want to get good at surfing, you have to start getting into some of the weeds and the details of this stuff because you didn't have that luxury as a 4-year-old with a dad who surfs living next to the beach. So I think culturally that's part of it, and it's amazing what you can when you start breaking it down. It's amazing how fast and quickly you can learn. And once you know what to look for in the ocean, then yeah, you're going to learn so much faster. I think it's an advantage, like the experience in that adult brain. You can learn a lot faster than a kid learns in some
Well,
ways.
when there's explicit instruction, and that's what you and I are guiding more adults with, and that's what the book is. It's funny when I have parents bring their kind of up and coming competitive kids, and they're like 10, 11, and they're like, I really want you to teach my kid about paddling technique. I was like, okay. They'll go through the whole level one course in like 20 minutes. Like they get it like that. Their neuroplasticity is so fluid. And I don't need to tell them anything explicit. I just say, all right, get in the pool. Okay. What do you feel? Okay. Straighten that arm out. Okay. Do it again. Whereas with an adult, I have to explain, okay, these are the drag forces you're experiencing. This is why we need to do this. And as an adult, we process so many more things, but we learn explicitly versus the implicit learning of a child who can go out and just do trial and error. And that's even yesterday I was in the ocean with a client and I said, listen, there's a certain point where you need to be less hesitant to go because you think you're going to fall. And then you need to be less precious with the waves you surf because you're not going to progress. You need to be a kid sometimes and just try stuff, right? And as adults, like kids don't care. Like
Yeah,
they really don't care if they fall. They're like, hey, check this out. Boom. And be precious with your strokes and be a little bit more wasteful with the waves that you surf, and you'll progress a lot faster that way. And he was like, oh yeah, I think I could be a kid. I was like, I know you can be a kid.
that's a good way to put it. Be more precious with your strokes, less precious with your waves.
It's
Exactly.
hard though. It's really hard when you're waiting 5 minutes, 10 minutes, get a
Yeah.
good one. Oh man,
Yeah.
it's really hard. Even I have trouble with that one.
Yeah. No, but I think
Yeah.
to add to that, it's we can be really as adults. Kids sort of yeah because they don't care. They're not as obsessed with watching the ocean. But I think as adults, we can really like. I remember when I first started surfing in the east coast of Australia, and I remember surfing with Nathan Hedge, and you're in a lineup with a lot of good surfers, sitting there waiting for a set, and then all of a sudden Nathan Hedge starts paddling like a madman, and he's like, "Oh, why is he paddling?" And then 5 seconds later, everyone else sees the set coming. He
Mm,
saw it before everyone else. Why?
yeah.
Because he was he wasn't just sitting there waiting for the set. He's just scanning that little sliver of ocean, looking for the tiniest little bit of detail, so he sees
Yeah.
the set coming before anyone else because he wants it more than anyone else.
I think they also have an innate sense of timing, and we haven't seen a set in a while. I was talking about this a few days ago with someone. Was like, if we haven't seen a set in a while, do you think one might be coming? Like we've been surfing kind of these inside ones. We've been drifting. Do you think we should take a few extra strokes out just in case? And he's like, oh yeah, that's a good point. And like almost on cue, I look like a magician. A set appeared, but it was like you'll sense it too, but his sensitivity is probably heightened. It's like his sensitivity on the board itself
Mm.
through all that experience, right?
Oh, for sure. I think that's definitely part of it. I also think that his eye for detail is far more nuanced than he even realizes. Do you
Yeah.
know, like maybe a shimmer on some rock out, because when you're looking at the ocean, it's this tiny little sliver.
Yeah. Yeah.
Like when we see those photographs taken from up high, we can see the lines stacked out the back and the shapes of each set and stuff. And but we have such a different perspective when we're sitting in the water. But I think great surfers can look at that sliver in a far greater detail without them even realizing.
Yeah.
And yeah, sometimes it's instinct. They're like, oh, hasn't been a set in a while. The rhythm of the sets has been like this. I'm going to paddle out. Or sometimes they see a little, whether it's a glimmer or a rebound of a headland in the distance or something. They
Yeah.
just their eye picks that up without them realizing it. They just feel like they should paddle out the back.
Yeah.
So what I always tell
Yeah.
people as an adult surfer, you have the ability to focus on that sliver like a madman.
Yes. Yeah.
And
That is a
that's
very good
one
point.
advantage you have over kids is like you have the ability to really to focus better. And so
Yeah.
when you're surfing, don't just sit out the back waiting for a wave. Focus on the horizon. Focus on that sliver of water. ABS, I say ABS, always be surfing, always be predicting when the wave is coming, where the next set's going to break. And it goes back to what you said, if you've looked at the different all the seven different swells that are in the water on the surf line, on the detailed part of the surf line report, and there's a secondary and a tertiary swell, and you kind of know what to look for. If you know what the tide's doing and the way that the rips move at your local beach, because you know
Yes.
what to be looking for. You know the way that a southerly swell refracts off the headland when it's 15 seconds. You know to be looking for the double ups, or the more you look for, the more you understand that those details exist, the more you can look for them. And I think that
Yeah.
helps us to focus more while we're waiting,
Yeah.
which again comes back to efficiency because then you know when to paddle. Yeah.
Yeah. No, it's a great point. I'm just thinking of these little kids that you're right. They don't have this focus. They're honestly like within maybe a 5 meter radius. They're like wave, 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 right? And it's like a dog looking for a squirrel. It's like squirrel, right? And then they just go and they surf it, and they just go and surf it, and that's how they learn super quick. It spurred a thought in me to that maybe the audience might be helpful is something you said earlier is identifying, okay, where are you at on your journey and finding waves that will help you to that next step, right? So if you're looking for waves that are air waves and you're really just trying to work on your bottom turn, you're looking for the wrong type of wave, the wrong surf spot, right? And so you're not going to get the reps that you need for the bottom turn or for the top turn or for just getting to your feet or just paddling around, getting a sense for the wave picking you up. So I talk a lot to my clients, and I'm sure you talk the same, is like there are certain conditions that this is your wheelhouse. You're looking for a wave that might give you one or two turns. Do you need to go to all the beautiful point breaks and battle the crowd and sit and wait for 30 minutes before you even get a chance at maybe getting a sliver of one? No, you can go find something that has maybe one or two turn sections, or maybe just a closeout if that's what you're working on, is just getting to your feet, right? And you're going to get way more quality reps in a shorter amount of time than having to deal with it. Now, I always get pushback like, oh, but those waves are so much better. It's like, yeah, I get that, but are you gonna go for 50 to 100 meters and not do anything? Like again, now you're back to not progressing. And so I think for me personally, there are sessions when I'm working on progression and I'm really focused. And then there are sessions where I just want to surf and have fun and just glide. I think we talked about this last time because you talked about your 12-foot glider. And yeah, I think it depends on how you're feeling, but in terms of progression, you really do want to align where you're at and what's that next step. And that's where you need a coach to help you tell you, yeah, that wave that you keep trying to sit at and you're, in Santa Cruz and there's 100 people on the point and you're waiting your turn for the wave of the day, you're missing lots of opportunities. right, to
Yeah.
get better. And so your timeline is going to be much longer.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, kids that they'll be sitting on the inside, or they'll be sitting at a beach break, just goofing around, having fun. I
Yeah.
mean,
Yeah. Taking everything, like literally
yes.
everything. I was doing a level two in Santa Cruz, and it was in the afternoon. And one of the locals, it was only like five of us at the main point, and I was like, this is great. We got our pick of the litter. We got sets, we got inside, we got middle, we got tons of reps. And then this one local was like, uh-oh, school just got out. And I was like, I saw like one or two kids battle out, and I was like, oh, that's not bad. It's not bad. He's like, oh, the surf team's coming. And I was like, all of a sudden, like 30 kids, and I'm not even kidding. It was like 30 kids, and they took every bump that came through, and they dropped in on each other, and they were having the best time. And there were a few rippers in the group, but the rest of them were just kind of just cruising along and having fun. And you're right. They're just like squirrel, 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 squirrel.
Yeah. Yeah. I think for adults, there's a happy medium because obviously they've got boundless energy and super quick recovery times. They can wake up the next day and do it all again. And
Do it all again. Yeah.
so as
Yeah.
adults, we want
Agreed.
to look for that
Agreed.
efficiency, and that's to an advantage in some ways because
Yeah.
we have that awareness. But I mean, it's a great point if you really. I think the pop up or the takeoff is surfing's hardest and most important maneuver.
Yeah.
And
I
the more
love it
you
that
can
you're calling it a
practice that,
maneuver. I tell people all the time, it's a maneuver. Like you
yeah.
see very beautiful takeoffs and you see really ugly takeoffs. You see really fast takeoffs. You see really slow takeoffs. And they all have a nuance to them. And the ones that you see are what we would consider maybe the best, quote unquote. Um, they're the ones that um, they have function as well as kind of an art to it, right? So
Oh yeah.
I agree with you completely that that one's the most overlooked.
It's also the most physically demanding and dynamic maneuver in surfing. I mean, someone like Oki exaggerates how little you need to move your body. Watch Oki surf. Don't watch him surf. Watch what his body does. He's compressing and extending very little. He moves his arms a little bit, but his lean and his subtle twist, the timing doesn't. He
Yeah,
barely moves.
yeah.
So going
Wow,
from
that's a
lying
really
down
good
on
point. Yeah,
lying down on your stomach to getting to your feet, that is the hardest part of surfing.
yeah,
The rest of
yeah,
it's all
yeah,
about timing and subtlety, and that's stuff you can work on a skateboard, or you can work on in front of a mirror, really, if you're obsessed enough, and that's something I recommend doing. But what's the point if you can't read the ocean and paddle efficiently?
and get the rep, get
Yeah,
the potential opportunity to do that.
and
Yeah,
pop up properly. Yeah, yeah.
yeah.
What's something you learned that isn't in your YouTube videos whilst you're going through the process of writing your book?
What's not in the YouTube or the online course
Yeah,
or just in general?
I'm just wondering
The
if there's
book
any
writing, yeah, the
details
book
that came
writing.
out.
I think the main thing was making sure, well, there was a new technique that I started teaching about near the end of completion of the book that I finally was able to kind of just explicitly kind of write out. So there were some things that were coming out that were new. And I don't know if you've seen the bibliography. There's a lot of documents back there from when I pull all the information from. And so I think it was funny that the biggest thing I learned was that it's okay to have a version two. Like 'cause at this point, I was just delaying and procrastinating the release of the book. Like I had written the manuscript years ago, and then I just kept saying to myself, "Oh well, I need it to be perfect. I need it to be perfect. I need to make sure that all the information's spot on. That it's all right. We have the references in the back, and that I include this and that. And um, I hired a professional editor. We went through it two or three times. I've hired a professional illustrator, and I just kind of kept procrastinating the full release. And I was like, oh, well, now I have to format it. Oh, what font should I use? How big is the spacing? And I obsessed over this. And really all it was procrastination. And I realized that, I got, three, four, five different author versions of it, and I read through it, and I was like, okay, it's perfect. Time to release. And I release it, and I get the first batch, and I find a typo. And I'm like, God damn it, are you kidding me? Like, and the funny thing, the lesson I learned from that was, it's I could, fix it and then reprint. I can definitely do that, but I'm going to keep it because I like the idea that I'm human and that it has mistakes and it's okay. It doesn't change the meaning of the paragraph that it's in. It doesn't change the meaning of the book or the main content. It's not even in the main content. It's near the fringes of it. But all that procrastination I did, it was, and all this worrying really wasn't for anything. It was just a waste of my own energy. I wasn't being efficient with my energy. But yeah, that was probably the biggest thing I learned throughout the whole process is you hear that it's really, really hard. The actual physical and mental writing of the book is not hard. The formatting's not hard. The fact that I've never done it before, that what was hard about it. It was self-conscious. It was scary. It was vulnerable. Now it's in print, right? For some reason with the videos, even though yeah, they're recorded and they're published, I could take them down, right?
Mm.
Now it's in print. Now it's like feels much more permanent. So I felt this need and this responsibility to make it perfect. And then at the end, it's not perfect. And I find beauty in that. And I find like that's awesome, and like hopefully this sparks kind of a fire under some people's bottoms to go and do more research in this area. We have some research in paddling. There's some research in technique. The university I've been talking to, and in Australia, and in here in California, and in Europe, there's some, but there needs to be more. There needs to be a lot more. And if you look at kind of the journey that swim research went through in the 60s, it kind of started out with a coach that was kind of scientifically minded, was like, I'm going to challenge these assumptions we all have and put a little bit of structure to them and really work on these experiments. Now, he wasn't academically trained to do experiments. He became later on academically trained, but that sparked it all. And then they
Mm.
did a reprint in the 90s. His son actually did a reprint of everything with the new technology and the new research that's been done. But that was the thing that kind of pioneered it, was in the 60s. And it's still going on today with new technology, new research. So if you look at, from the 60s all the way to today, that's several decades. We're that swimming, which is heavily covered, still hasn't really finished. They haven't made it to the finish line of what is 100% true and fact. They're still tinkering.
Mm.
And we're at the beginning of surfing. And it's not just paddling technique, but it's all surfing. Like there should, if this can spark a fire under the academics butts to start doing more and more testing of this. I want them to challenge these things. I want them to academically, with good rigor, do these things. And if I'm wrong, I'm happy to be wrong. I'll do a version 2. I'll add their study to the back, right? That's what this hopefully will spark. I'm crossing my fingers that it does something to get somebody to do something about it, because there needs to be more. To your point, like other sports, they're decades ahead of us.
Yeah. Yeah. Do you see that new company they got a tail pad that's pressure sensitive and has a gyroscope in it?
No,
So they
that's
can,
awesome.
yeah, so you can get, real time feedback of what pressure is on which part of the tail pad and the board angle and
Oh, that is
the board speed.
fantastic. Yeah, that is
So,
it. That's what we need. That's what
yeah,
we want.
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, I see that. I don't think they've released it yet. I think it's called Tracks with an X. It popped up on
Okay.
my Instagram.
That's
But
great. Yeah,
interesting to see what they do with that.
absolutely. And who's going to get involved in that? Like, I've been working with a few people that are doing some new technology with video AI stuff where they can take, a really good surfer, just a video of them, and overlay your movement on top of them
Mm,
and really break down all the little nuances like you've talked about, the difference between you versus me on the same place on that wave. For example, I think that would, again, it's more information and then we have to go apply it. right?
Oh, is there an AI like a Coach's Eye is what there's this software that's been used for that a lot. But if there's an AI is it AI that's sort of doing it faster?
So it's a camera that actually, like flow state. You have flow state at Urban Surf, or where it identifies a surfer just based off of their surfboard or their
Yeah.
what they're wearing, and then
Mm.
it sorts their videos. So it does that, but then it tracks every movement of the surfer, and it has stock images of a pro surfer on the same wave,
Oh, cool.
and then it tracks it about the same location, and then you
Ah.
can see kind of an overlay of one over the other, and you can be like, yeah, see, you're way out here on the shoulder, and they're back here in the pocket, right? And they're turning their shoulder at this point, and you've already turned your shoulder, or you haven't turned it yet. So stuff like that, and I think that's coming online. I think there's more and more use cases for that. But yeah, the trackpad, I think that's the camera stuff. I think is very flashy. It's very useful in real time, but there still needs to be academic rigor behind it, right? To really solidify that, okay, yeah, that's what everybody should do, because there are unique athletes out there that make a certain movement, and it's
Mm.
not actually proven scientific. Like Michael Phelps is a very asymmetric swimmer. He breathes, his strokes are not even. He does one longer stroke than the other. He kind of always does
Mm.
that longer stroke and then a quick stroke and then longer
Yeah.
stroke and quick stroke. And yet he gets some pretty darn good results, right?
Mm.
So how can you say that he is the absolute best swimmer in the world with the best technique? He's the best swimmer in the world, yes, but what is the technique that can be replicated towards the
Yeah.
recreational swimmer or the lower age swimmer?
Well, it's something the human body's not symmetrical as much as we'd like to think it is. It's not, your heart sits further to the left, your liver's on the right hand side. You have one neurologically, you have one hand that's more dominant and stronger as well, and that those could be different sides. You'll have bone length discrepancies. So as much as we strive for symmetry, it's nice to think about and aim for, but it's also not possible. So it's dependent, right? And like you said with surfing, gosh, this person's height difference and the type of board they're riding is going to change their surfing technique, and of course that
Yeah.
their technique might be part of their style, and that's what's different about them. I think
Right.
there certainly are certain fundamentals, where you place your board is the most powerful part of the wave and that sort of stuff. Um, yeah, but no, there is a lot of room for improvement. I think the biggest thing is like sometimes it doesn't matter when, at least my experience personally and with other clients, it doesn't matter when and where you're putting your bottom turn. If you don't even realize how scared you are or how I call it strobing, and if you've ever experienced a wave where it was filmed maybe and it's a 5 second wave, let's say, but it felt like it was half a second, and you have your memory of it is strobe like it was just flashes.
Mm,
But then sometimes when you are surfing and you're in the zone, a 5 second wave feels like 10 seconds, and you knew what your hand was doing,
yeah.
and time slowed down. That's to get to that point. I think that you'd need a lot of confidence in the water
Yeah.
and
Comfort.
to feel
Yeah.
and comfort in the
Yeah.
water. Whereas I think
Yeah.
even subconsciously we don't realize how scared we are in the ocean a lot of the times.
Yeah. No, I see that with paddling. Again, I kind of stop once they're standing, but you'll every once in a while see a client that you can definitely tell. I have to pull them back to the beach and just have a little, you know, real time with them and say, what's really going on? Because like when I see, what's beautiful about when I get to work with someone in person is I get to see them in the pool, and I'll have them go through the pool, and I can see the body movements, the body language that is relaxed, that is comfortable. It's controlled. We put them out on the lagoon, a little less controlled. Maybe they tense up, maybe they don't. When they get in the ocean, that's a lot of people are like, why are you doing the ocean stuff? It's like, well, I want to see how the movement changes once you're in that environment. And it inevitably always changes. And it might not be a comfort thing. It could be they're just distracted with, again, squirrels. They're like, squirreling and not thinking about anything else. But yeah, every once in a while I have to pull a client aside and be like, what's really going on? Like,
Mm.
where's the fear coming from? And their movement vastly changes just from paddling,
Oh
and
yeah,
let
yeah,
alone if they're on a wave.
yeah. Oh,
Again, I have the
shame,
easier job.
shame and anxiety comes into play a lot with surfing because it's always done in a public place.
Yeah.
You can't practice by yourself. You know, and
Yeah.
if you can, you probably shouldn't be out there by yourself. It's dangerous. But you know, when you are surfing, there's someone watching, and I think that's the beauty with kids is they don't care. They're just
Nah, they don't
having
care.
fun, so their bodies are relaxed and they're
Yeah.
in the moment. And I think that's one of the hardest parts in surfing to improve is being focused and present in the moment, so that you can change your technique. And yeah,
Yeah.
there's fear and there's shame and there's all sorts of factors that contribute to that. But back to
It's funny you
Pat.
say that. I'll bring something up real quick, Mike. Sorry to interrupt you, but there's a lot of people watching you in the lineup, and there's a lot of judgment, and I think that's where like the shame and the anxiety comes from. But one of the things that I've realized is that they're looking at you just because of personal, selfish reasons. They just want to see if they can get more waves for themselves. They don't really care about you and what you're doing. They just want more waves, right? And
Exactly.
so I started looking at it that way, and I'm like, oh, well, they don't really care if I have really good style or bad style. They're just judging me if they can get waves, more waves
Exactly.
from me, and that's it. That's it.
Yeah.
That's where it ends. That's where their thought ends. Like they're not breaking down every little thing. And when people get anxiety about like, oh, they saw me botch that turn. It's like they didn't really care, right? They didn't care about any of that. They just wanted to know if they were going to drop in on you or not, right? And that's it.
Yep, that is it. Like we've all got a friend who you've been surfing with and you've seen them not surf to their potential. Did it matter? Did you not be friends with them? Did you care?
Right.
Did you? No, it's no one actually cares. It is all in our head. It's like other
Yeah.
the we put our judgment of what other people of the way other people are judging us. Like it's all in our head. Even what and you're
Yes.
just imagining what they're judging.
Yeah.
But in reality, yeah,
Yeah.
they're just wondering. They're just hoping you fall off so they can take the wave. They don't
Yeah.
care about how you're surfing or anything like that.
Absolutely.
And the irony is, it is there is a competence hierarchy in surfing. So the best
Yeah.
surfers tend to get the best waves, or not even. It's not even that, is it? It's the best. It's the best at catching and reading the ocean that get the most waves
Right.
because you
Well, and then they get reinforced when they surf the wave well. Everyone's like, "Oh, wow, that was really cool. I want to watch them again, or I'm gonna let them have the next one because I
kind
can't
of.
surf as I don't want to waste it." Right. I've seen that as well.
Yeah, but if you define surfing it well, not it doesn't have to be ripping or shredding. It could be you're just doing some
Smooth. Yeah.
nice smooth
Yeah.
turns in rhythm with the ocean.
Yeah. Agreed.
That's still good surfing,
Hmm.
and that's a lot of what I've been talking about recently. Is like, well, yeah, in order to enjoy surfing properly, you need to define what good surfing means to you. Maybe it is just standing there and doing some little turns in rhythm with the wave and having a relaxed body, because that's still
Yeah.
really good surfing. You don't have to go there out there on a shortboard and try and pretend that you're in a competition. That's such a
Yeah.
small, and that tends to frustrate a lot of people. Whereas I prefer to watch Torren Martin or Devon Howard surf nowadays.
Hmm. Seems more relatable.
Kind of.
Yeah. You said something earlier about how like the pros are constantly trying to improve. The pros are just as insecure as we are, but
Hmm.
just on a different level.
Yeah.
It's crazy how the more I get to work with them, the more you realize they're just like us in terms of that insecurity. And you're sitting there going, "Man, you shred. You are amazing surfer. Don't Why are you stressing this much? Oh, that guy's so much better than me. Why do you think he's better than me? Oh, because he's a better paddler than me." I was like, hold on a second. You're associating his paddling with his surfing now? Like, yeah, those are not, they're mutually exclusive. He could be a really good paddler and not a good surfer, not as good as you. But at that elite level, at that 1% level, that could make all the difference. And so it's interesting you brought that up, and I just wanted the audience to know that these pros and these good surfers, they're just as insecure as we are, just on a different level
And they
as they're
also,
surfing.
yeah, that's a good point, but it's more nuanced because their insecurity and all that stuff, it remains outside of them surfing a wave. Because when they're on the wave, they're present and they're surfing the wave.
Mm.
Now they might go back and watch the footage and go, "Oh fuck, I need to do, I need to
Just
do,"
like us. Yeah.
and they'll put the time in outside of surfing, and they'll trust that the work they've put in outside of surfing a wave will translate. But when they're on the wave, they're present, and when they're
Yeah.
surfing, they've forgot about that wave. It doesn't matter. I'll I'll work on it outside of, or I like the analogy of the musician. When you're playing in a band with your friends, you're listening to the drummer and you're trying to be better at the song. As soon as you start thinking, oh, am I in time? Am I doing this right? Well, there's nothing you can do about it, right? You're playing the song together. You might as well focus and be the best you can in that moment. And if you think you need to be better, well, you go home and practice. Go away and practice. So I think good professionals in any, whether it's music or surfing or any sport, they have the ability to separate those things. They don't let that anxiety and that self doubt creep into their actual performances and their experience. They work
Yeah.
on that outside of that. Whereas I think that's a big part of what separates the good from the great is sometimes we let that stuff creep into our actual surfing experiences and we're worried about what people look or how we're looking when we're actually surfing the wave. And then
Yeah.
the opposite of a flow state happens. Time seems to
Yeah.
speed up and we get that strobing effect.
Is the ultimate kind of present state when you do it in that flow state. And I always assimilate like Steph Curry because he's so big here. He's not thinking about his shot when he throws it up, and he immediately forgets about a miss or a make, and then very next moment he's off to the next thing. And then like we've been watching a lot of NBA the last few years, and when you see a player really get into a kind of a funk, they have they're no longer in that moment anymore. They're thinking about those little things in the moment, and they're not going back and just relying, like you said, relying upon the training outside of it. But the difference is, and I use this analogy a lot with people, it's Steph Curry can after a game, if he had a bad free throw game, he can go and shoot free throws over and over and over again and really practice, practice, practice. Tough for
Yep.
us to shoot free throws on a surfboard, metaphorically
Yeah.
speaking, the same section over and over again. And that's where wave pools, I think, help a bit. There's at least some sense of repetition in the wave, so you can do the same thing over and over again.
Yeah.
Um,
Well,
but yeah,
you have
real
to be a
difficult.
bit, and you also have to be a bit more creative. You know, there's plenty of dry land training. Like, I mean, that's what on my website there's a free PDF where we break down. We, here's what a pop up is. Here's how you practice it in slow motion, forwards and backwards. I've got videos on all that stuff, so you can get creative and practice your pop up technique, the mobility of it, the strength of it, the control of it, where your eyes are looking the whole way through it, that sort of stuff. You can practice that on dry land. You can get a skateboard and practice some of the surfing techniques. You can join Brad Gerlach's wave key thing. You can read Rob Case's book on surfing paddling and watch all of his surfing videos in order to understand what is efficient paddling, what are some hydrodynamic principles and all of that stuff. I think so. There's so much out there that we can look at outside of our surfing time.
Yeah.
And that comes back to something that when I first started this podcast, I was obsessed with surfing, and that those years, that's what I was doing. I was watching videos. I was learning about stuff. I was skateboarding when the waves were flat. I was so yeah. We don't get to practice on a wave that much, or like you said. I mean, wave pools are changing that somewhat, but that's expensive. But there's so much else we can do if
Yeah,
we
we've been able to,
truly
we
want to get
have to
better.
get creative. Like you said, we had to get creative over the years because that's also the uniqueness of surfing is that every wave is unique. It is a one, that one moment in time will not happen again on that wave in that exact place. Even in a wave pool, all the waves are nuanced, a little bit different, right? So it's so unique, and that's what we love about surfing as well.
Exactly.
Is that's why it's the greatest teacher of being in the present.
Yeah. I mean, because it's so unique and rare, that's what makes it special. But I think be- because of that reason, all that work that you put in to finally get there makes all the difference. And then you feel
Yeah.
confident to book a trip to the tropics with, 18-second period swells because you're a confident paddler and you've done your underwater training and you're strong and you're fit. And, it's so exciting. Surfing is, even Kelly Slater himself still wants to get better, right? This,
Yeah. Yeah.
they still
It's
want to
awesome.
improve. There's no ceiling
Yeah.
with
There's no
surfing.
perfect. There's no perfect in surfing.
No, not at all. Rob, what's your website?
Surfingpaddling.com. Pretty simple. Just remember the ing after surfing.
Yep.
Surfingpaddling.com.
Okay, great.
And that's where people can get, access to the book. With the book, there's a link on there. If you sign up through that link, you get 3 free videos that help illustrate some of the principles that I outline in the book. And then later on, I send you a little discount code for the online course that helps further, connect the words to visuals if you can't come work with me here or wherever I end up in the world. But yeah, lots of resources at the website. That's the main place to get it.
Yep. Okay. Awesome. Listeners, if you want to learn the audio version of some of the details of paddling technique, you can go back to episode 12 of this podcast, our original episode, and you can go to Rob's YouTube channel as well, and of course surfingpaddling.com for everything else. There will be links to that in the show notes. And Rob, thank you so much for your time.
It was great talking with you, Mike. Appreciate it.
All right.
Be well, buddy.
Thank you so much for tuning into the Surf Mastery podcast. That was Rob Case, surfingpaddling.com. Are you subscribed to this podcast? I hope you are. It's the best way to support the show and never miss. Another way to support the show is just to simply share this episode with a friend. And of course, the best way to support this show and your own surfing at the same time is to go ahead and check out the Surf Mastery mini course at surfmastery.com. Until next time, keep surfing.